All right, let's talk about that little box on the side of your house, your smart meter. You might not think about it much, but it's actually at the heart of a scientific debate that's been raging for over 50 years. This whole story connects something as simple as your electricity bill to some really big questions about technology and ourselves. So, to really get this, we have to go back in time. Picture this: it's Warsaw, Poland, October 1973. The World Health Organization gets all the top scientific minds in one room. I mean, the leading researchers from all over the globe for this really big, important symposium. And what were they all there to talk about? Well, it was this one central question: what are the health hazards of microwave radiation? And you got to understand, this wasn't some fringe idea. No way. This was a super serious, high-level investigation into the biological effects of a technology that was, starting to be everywhere. You'd think a big meeting like that would settle things, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, for the next 50 years, 5 decades, scientists kept digging, kept debating, and honestly kept disagreeing about the potential health impacts of this stuff. Okay, so fast forward to today. That exact same debate is popping up again, but this time it's focused on something way closer to home. It's not about specialized labs or military gear anymore. Now, we're talking about that little box on the side of your house. So that leads to the obvious question: what exactly is that box on the wall? Let's break it down. What is a smart meter, and what's it actually doing? You see, a smart meter isn't like the old ones that just passively spun a wheel. Oh no. This thing is an active, two-way communication device. It's constantly, wirelessly zapping your usage data back to the utility company. And it does this in these short, high-power bursts. You can call them pulses. And get this, it can happen thousands of times a day. But here's the kicker, and what makes it so different from pretty much any other gadget in your house. Think about it. Your Wi-Fi router, you can turn it off. Your phone, you can put it in airplane mode. With a smart meter, you have zero control. You can't turn it off. You can't tell it to only transmit when you're out of the house. You can't even power it down when you go to sleep. And that lack of control brings us to a really, really crucial point in this whole debate. It's all about how you measure exposure. Are we talking about averages, or are we talking about peaks? Okay, so most of the time, regulators look at the average exposure over, say, 24 hours. It's like if you took a really bumpy road and just drew a straight, flat line over it. When you smooth it all out, the number looks pretty low, pretty harmless. But critics say, hang on a second, our bodies don't feel the average, do they? No, our bodies experience those intense, sharp spikes of energy, the bumps in the road. And that's what they argue we really need to be looking at. Here's a fantastic way to wrap your head around it. A peak is like a fire alarm. It's not going off constantly, right? But when it does go off, man, it's that brief, incredibly loud, disruptive blast that jolts your system. That's the idea behind a peak. So what does that look like in the real world with actual numbers? Well, here you go. This is a real measurement from just one smart meter on a regular family home. The peak hit 5,586 microwatts per square meter. And to put that in perspective, that single spike is already higher than some of the precautionary health guidelines you'll see in other countries. Okay, but remember, that's just 1 meter. What happens when you're not in a single family home? The whole picture can change, and I mean dramatically, when you start looking at places like apartment buildings, where all the meters are banged together. So let's think about that. If one single meter can hit a peak like the one we just saw, what on earth happens when you get a whole wall of them? Let's say a bank of 22 meters, all firing off from the same spot on an apartment building. This is what happens. We're talking about a real-world measurement from a bank of 22 meters, and the peak exposure shot past 1 million microwatts per square meter. Let me say that again because it's kind of nuts. Over 1 million. And this is not a simulation. This isn't a theoretical number. It's a measurement of what's actually happening. And this is exactly where technology slams right into policy. The argument here is that this isn't just some random accident. It's a completely foreseeable result. It's what happens when you combine mandates for smart infrastructure with policies that encourage high-density housing. The two create this cumulative exposure. And just like that, we're right back where we started, aren't we? These modern concerns about cumulative low-level exposure, they are a direct, you might even say a loud echo of that scientific debate from half a century ago. What's really striking is how much the packaging has changed, but the question inside is exactly the same. We've gone from a formal scientific symposium in Warsaw to a simple utility box on a wall. But that core question, that fundamental uncertainty, it's still right there. And don't think for a second that this was all settled back then. Not even close. If you actually read the official report from that 1974 meeting, it says right there in the preface, clear as day, that there were unresolved differences in everything from the biological effects they were seeing to the safety standards they were creating. So, how unresolved are we talking? Well, prepare yourself, because this is pretty staggering. At the time, the safety standard in the US was 10,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. Okay. In the Soviet Union, it was just 10. That's not a small difference. That is 1,000 times difference. It just shows you there was this massive, fundamental disagreement across the globe about what was even remotely safe. And it gets even crazier. If you actually look at the agenda from that 1973 symposium, it's like déjà vu. The topics they were debating, the challenges of measurement, the public health aspects, the effects on the nervous system. I mean, come on, these are the exact same things people are talking about with smart meters today. So all of this history lands us firmly in the present day. And it raises questions that go beyond just the technology itself. Now we have to talk about people, and we have to talk about personal choice. And that brings us straight to the idea of consent. According to the source material, the argument is that most people were never really informed about these devices being installed. They weren't asked to opt in. And now, if you want an alternative, you often have to pay extra fees. The point being made is that this isn't a real choice. It's more like economic pressure. And just to be super clear, the argument being presented here isn't let's ban all smart technology. Not at all. It's about making sure that people, that residents, actually have a real say, a meaningful choice about the kind of technology that's being attached to their own homes. And that really leaves us all with a big, critical question to think about. As we keep building this smart world of ours, how do we find the right balance? How do we balance all the progress and the push for new infrastructure with something just as important, the principle of personal choice and consent? It's a question they were asking 50 years ago, and honestly, it might be more important today than it ever has been.